it before our meeting. I guess my one question was, I felt like the traveling exhibit space was so, kind of to your point, was so isolated. I almost, and I don't know, but I almost felt like, I'd rather have it over where it's like classroom with wet lab features and kind of put the classroom more over in the corner. And certainly if we're going to reduce the classroom space, I don't know. Thoughts?
I think that's a good thought. It is interesting the way this originally pans out from the standpoint that you have your classrooms at 6 o'clock, your exhibit areas at 12 o'clock, your traveling exhibit at 9, and your lab space at 3. So yeah, from a flow standpoint, I can see what you're all talking about. And I think we can certainly bring that up to them and see if this makes a little more sense. Now, I will say, and to your point of things being isolated, there's part of that actually I find attractive. That is, it gives people a chance to explore, right? This isn't going to be so big. It's not like going to the Carnegie or to the Field or to New York Museum, or I'm sorry, the American Museum, and where you have to, navigate quite a bit of infrastructure to get to a particular space. So all that said, that can be detrimental to an experience, but this isn't that large, so there isn't really an opportunity to get lost here. So I'm just tossing that out for some consideration.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, if you've got a lot of people who want to see the traveling exhibit,
mm-hmm.
it's almost feels like you're putting them into a cattle chute, putting it at the end of the hall like that.
All right. So that's a good point. If you're a member and you've seen all of the exhibits, and we put a new exhibit in this 1,361 square foot area, the good news is that as you go through the front door, which is directly, I hope you can see my cursor, right? You either go to the stairs or the elevator and you're actually right there. So again, just tossing that out there, but we're going to bring up to him on Monday that the idea of the traveling exhibit being readily available, because it does change out to be kind of a priority. Yeah,
and I could also see, let's just assume it's like a super popular traveling exhibit, that you have a line down the hallway blocking the stairs in the bathroom.
Okay. That hasn't come up. I mean, the idea of the good problems of being
right.
Wildly successful. So let's bring that up on Monday. I'm going to share notes on the 3 meetings after we do the last one. So
it may be something that even the fire marshal's like, you cannot block the stairs.
Sure. Well, we'll make that certainly part of the discussion on Monday. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do is to kind of walk you through how we got from point A to point B. I just want to make sure that everyone's who wants to know is aware of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go to my PDFs once I find where they're at. All right, so Jonathan and Tom, I know you're still over there listening. Please jump in if I miss anything. So, we had our pre-plan from 2019, and it did what it was supposed to do. It got us a cost estimate and so forth. There are a number of issues with the design, and that's not unusual. As we move into the first phase of detailed design, we want to make sure that those are at least addressed. So in this particular diagram, what our architecture team did was to create what they call a flow diagram. So all of the purple that you see here and over here are specific for exhibit areas. The yellow are public areas such as the shop and the entrance and lobby and so forth, restrooms and whatnot. Kind of gives the idea. We've got the classroom and laboratory over here, and then the green and the dark blue and the whatever color that is, violet. Those represent some of the back of house areas. So we begin to see how they interrelate to one another. And what that did for them was it allowed them to begin to create several different options of laying out these spaces from the standpoint of creating these stacking diagrams. So everything becomes these boxes that they begin to shift around. And so they gave us access to a number of different options showing different locations of classrooms, exhibits, back of house, etc. From there, they begin to pile the boxes on top of one another to give different options. So you can see the colors changing slightly as you see the layout changing and so forth. So they gave different views, right? So, oops. So this is the layout that they have now here. This is where the classrooms, I think it's that's not quite right. Hang on. No, must be, or at least it's slightly different. So you have the classrooms over here. Now this is not the final one. Sorry. I think we gave them some edits and they changed some things around. But from what you just saw, this becomes our classrooms here, an exhibit area here, another exhibit. This is where the lab and catering kitchen is over here. Well, you see this big white box here, that's rooftop mechanicals. So those go behind something of a shield to not only hide them, but also to be a sound buffer and so forth. So when they put those together, they then begin to create a skin over these different options. And this is what they call the concept massing, right? So this is what describes, I'm sorry, this is what informs their first thoughts of what a building should look like. Once they're done with that, and we've given them input on the flow diagram and so forth, right? They begin to put together something closer to a true concept. So if I want you to focus here at the top diagram on the left, right, you see a picture of the Blue Ridge with the green in the foreground, blue in the background, and that was what inspired the design. So if you see in this initial concept drawing here to orient you with this building here, if you were on site and you were standing in the South River Preserve right in front of the South River and looking towards the museum lot, this is what you'd see. So down here to the lower left, this is the main entrance to the museum. There is a kind of ramped up, which I think is kind of interesting. We have some more questions about it, but you have this ramped outdoor terrace that brings you up one level, right? And so what you also notice is that some of the architecture has this blue shade and some of it has this green shade. Well, they've used in the past, and they would like to propose using again stainless steel panels that are durable, but provide some kind of interesting texture to the building. And then the rest of it is kind of more traditional masonry that would match the existing architecture of the downtown. So they went ahead and went with that. And so this is kind of their first option here, again, showing that first level terrace with some sun shading. Again, this is very early in the design. There's lots that's going to change in this, right? So you've got your exhibit galleries that we saw in the other diagram, your rooftop mechanicals and so forth. Another area over here in the green square that is also representative of rooftop mechanical space if needed. That's the reason that was thrown in there. Here's a different view of that, kind of coming from the northeast side of the city. It's kind of more from ground view. You got a drop-off area here in the original plan. Don't take that too seriously because they're still kind of mucking around with the layout of parking and so forth. But it just gives the idea that they're thinking about drop-off zones, parking, and so forth. This is from the Broad Street Bridge to the north of us, from sort of on the Main Street Bridge, kind of like this is what you'd see if you're coming off the Blue Ridge Parkway and Skyline Drive and entering Waynesboro. And then the rear, so right here is Arch Avenue on your left-hand side, Main Street right in front of us. They were talking about having a large wall that might be appropriate for draping banners and so forth. They offset the building from the sidewalk so they could talk about future expansion, right? Once we're wildly successful. So what's going to come next? Here's some more images of the same kind of concept. And some cartoon kind of renderings. But what's going to come next is that they'll they're going to take input that we have, and that's part of the reason for these Zooms. You know, take the input from the Waynesboro Advocacy Committee, the building design team that we put together, as well as these Zooms, and begin to modify this. The goal here for December is to get an updated cost estimate, right? So when we get into January, we can't turn around and say, oh, we've changed our mind. We'd like a 3-story building with a greenhouse attached to it. You know what I'm saying, right? You know, they just want us to confirm that a 2-level structure with exterior utilities, with they're proposing the idea of having an outside 2nd-story terrace. Personally, I kind of like, you know, and whatnot. And then you saw, let me see here. I'm still sharing screen, right? You guys can see this? Shoot. All right, this is Tom's diagram. Sorry, I got to bring up another one that I didn't have up. I just wanted to go through real quick the oops, detail design. I wanted to bring up the I think this is the right one. All right, I wanted to bring up some of the layout on the inside, which we've already kind of talked about. I'm going to scroll through these. Oh, goodness. Sorry, Ann. Got to find the right one here.
So I liked the exterior look. I liked it even without knowing that it was a nod to the Blue Ridge Mountains. So that makes it even better.
You know, it's actually kind of cool about it, which it didn't occur to me at first, but a couple different people had pointed it out, that this this look here, especially this view, it reminded people of our logo, where we have the river and the mountains. And believe it or not, you'll have to look this up because I don't have one handy, but if you look at the Waynesboro logo, by some kind of divine kind of coincidence, you know, our logo and the Waynesboro logo kind of look a lot alike, you know, so that's very convenient. So yeah, I like it too. Is there anything about the design that you're concerned about, or that, you know, just turns you off in any way? Nothing in particular really bothers you, Ann? Oh, sorry, we got you on mute still.
But she's muted yet.
Hey, Ann, I'm sorry. That was probably all really great, but we had you on mute.
Oh, I said, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to Tom. No, I really like it. I mean, there's nothing. And actually, I do like the drop-off area.
Yeah, and you know, don't forget too, there's still a lot to talk about landscape, about parking, materials, and we can still move things around inside the building, of course. So right now, what we have leaned upon with suggested modifications, including what we're getting now. I'll just walk you through it. So you've got the front of the building here, which is actually covered by the that second floor terrace. Incidentally, do you remember the the perpendicular wing design of the last design from pre-planning? So you had one wing kind of overhanging the other.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the reason we've moved away from that, and this just goes to show us some lessons learned, the firm that designed that for us was not well familiar with Virginia policies and so forth as far as building design goes. And where you have an occupied level that is an enclosed level that is over bare ground, even though it's outside, the bare ground underneath still counts towards your square footage. So that actually disqualifies that design. So is what it is. So that's why we've kind of gone with this more traditional stacking of the museum design. So you have the front door here. You got the museum store on the left. It's still a little too big, so I think we can actually shrink that, and that comes from our staff. They would like to see something smaller. A box office. This lobby area will have some exhibit areas. So you see here in blue. That doesn't mean that the blue is concentrated to this area. It's basically showing the proportional square footage that people will be able to enjoy exhibits right within the initial gathering space. These two spaces here are quite sizable. So of course I did this to the point where it's almost impossible for me to read the square footage here, but this is larger than 2 halls of ancient life here at this museum on Starling Avenue. So it's a really good size space, and it's going to be a great start to somebody's exhibit experience. Off to the side, we put staff, right? And that's one of the few areas we have windows. We have windows going for the staff. In the proposal here, we have windows going into the store in this part of the lobby, which is fine. The other back of house area here has a loading dock and some workspace and so forth, as well as some interior mechanicals. The red represents egress or stairwells, really, and so forth. And the discussion early on was that the specific exhibit area that is committed to our youngest visitors, the early childhood area, would represent maybe something over here in the flow, because that's very close to where the entrance is. So the people who have memberships, because they want to bring their children repeatedly to the early childhood area, can go back and forth very easily. And we've already discussed the second floor, and this doesn't have our current modifications associated with it. But I'm pretty comfortable at this point with the extent of the exhibits, particularly if we connect this, as we've always talked about, with the external landscape and make sure that we market the exploring of the South River Preserve and what it has to offer as part of the entire museum experience. So that's about it for my spiel, to try to just articulate how we got from point A to point B. But Anne, if you had, I know you already gave some great suggestions on that first floor, the isolation of the one exhibit hall, for instance. I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to comment on.
No, I mean, again, I kind of looked at it before this meeting, and
Right.
that was the only thing that jumped out at me. Though I did also like your comment. I liked your comment about eliminating that open to below space to give better flow.
Okay.
Because you already had one open to lobby space. So yeah, no, I think that was the only thing I was like, the second floor just looks, again, choppy.
That's a good
like,
word.
You might have a flow problem, particularly if you had a popular traveling exhibit.
Yeah, no one had brought up that idea of the line, and I like the term choppy. I think that's something that will resonate with them. as far as the open below area, so what we're talking about on the screen here is this kind of more narrow open below, I'll specifically ask about that as far as, do they have a particular vision? Like, we need to have that second open to below space because of A, B, or C, right? Offhand, I don't know what that would be.
It may be and I can't remember, but they may be thinking of light to that first floor exhibit space. So maybe they're thinking of a skylight on the roof that then goes through the second floor and then down to the first floor.
Could very well be. Tom also brought up the idea that by putting the open to below area here, it creates sort of what you were talking about with the traveling exhibits, a bit of an isolation or a flow issue with this big exhibit space here. In other words, if people came in, it limits what people can do as far as a proper flow around this large space. If this were gone and there are, say, 2 openings to this large space, then people could flow in one side, go through a whole series of exhibits and come out the other. That might be beneficial, particularly since this side on the left lines up pretty clearly with the flow of traffic coming off the first floor, right? People can come in and know that this is the entrance and then exit out a second area,
Yeah,
but
and
again, that does not address what you're talking about in terms of the isolation for sure.
yeah, though I agree with Tom. That's why I said, I hadn't really focused, but once Tom said that, I was like, oh, he's right. That just blocks another, way into the exhibit.
Right.
It's possible that does have value somewhere, and I don't really understand it from the exhibitor's point of view, or like you say, from a lighting point of view. One option would be to move that open to below space to kind of move it down towards the classrooms, and that would open up the corridor along the exhibit area. And again, that would create maybe some blockage to the classrooms, but there may be less issues with that.
Or even I was thinking, make it, yeah, we were trying to look, even thinking about, rather than horizontal, maybe vertical, if we didn't need all that classroom space.
More like a well than a rectangle there, huh?
Uh-huh.
I'm being
Okay.
quiet, and because I've had a lot of opportunity to give feedback on this, so it's not because I'm shy. I'm here to listen a little bit to what other people have to say. So
Well, good, Tom. I thought you had gotten shy since I'd last.
don't worry about that.
I was going to be terribly disappointed. Jonathan's been shy though, but that's in character.
Nah, Jonathan's been doing good. He's been turning the screws on the architects. I will just say that we had a floodplain meeting. Was it yesterday, Jonathan?
It was, yeah.
So do you want to really quick cover the results of that, which were kind of underwhelming?
Sure thing. Just they went over kind of the floodplain analysis they've done so far as constructability goes, which left a lot of questions to be asked about the flood mitigation that's been done by the city of Waynesboro. So the updates seem to be coming from 2007 to 2013, and there's been some extensive work done near, on, and around the river in between, which they were citing that they hadn't gotten the floodplain analysis back from FEMA because the FEMA servers were down, and just too many questions were left unanswered as far as their analysis went. And we were assured that it was simply to update us that they were working on it, and more progress will be made in the future. But yeah, so the good news, just from the basic buildability, the constructability analysis, the sites around the museum will have limited to no effect as far as flooding goes. So that was the good news, and they did seem fairly certain of that, although there wasn't a lot of certainty in the conversation, which was, reasonably disappointing.
Yeah,
Well-
really. Oh, sorry, Ann. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, thinking about that, not, because it does add complexity to the design. But, if we had any worries about flooding, either currently or in the future, due to climate change, is there a thought about elevating the first floor, but it would create steps and then obviously a handicap ramp to get into the museum in the front. But if anybody had any concerns, and again, cha-ching, it'll cost money, but it's a
Well-
thought.
Well, right now, they haven't told us anything that we weren't expecting. In fact, we told them stuff that they didn't know, which is part of the reason that, I know we've been working there for a long time and we're privy to information that I know a lot of folks aren't, but all they had to do was ask. Nonetheless, what we knew all along was that, yes, if you look in this diagram here and you look at the northwest corner of the building, right, because you're looking, west is sort of to your, 10 or 11 o'clock, right? So at the northwest corner, this is the high point here. We knew all along with the old data that the northwest corner of the building would have to go there. Everything else, the other the other three corners have to get lifted up, and they have to get lifted up 2 to 4 feet, depending on which area of the building you're talking about. And that is, according to everybody, that's doable. That's, been done a million times. So we don't have any concern about that. The three things that they didn't know about were the 2 bridge replacements and the dam removal, right? So that is not taken into account at all. So Jonathan turned the screws on them and made sure they knew that they have to do that. They have to, I don't know how you do that. This isn't my job, right? But, they have to do that. The second thing is that really what he was also doing was they need to have kind of harder information when they call us together for a meeting, because we're paying our construction manager to attend these meetings. And so when they don't have hard information, it could have been just a phone call with us and we told them what we know to give them a lead or something. But we were a little disappointed. Jonathan called him out of that. So he's been doing really well with that. But in the end, Tom, you might be interested to know, at least I was interested to know, and Jonathan, fill in the gaps in my understanding here, is that if we raise the building, we're okay, because even if the river overflows its banks and comes up here, by raising the building, it does not change the downstream effect on our neighbors. What happens is, and the reason that areas down here on Broad Street get flooded, it wasn't direct flow. It wasn't like direct flooding. It was sort of residual puddling. I don't know how else to describe it. Jonathan, do you remember the term they used for that?
No, I do know that they factored in the worst possible case scenario as far as raising the building, and there was no downstream effects. So that was some exciting news. I know the stormwater drainage system on that side of the building, there was a back pressure term that they used. It created some kind of back pressure, which floods those other sections of town.
Kind of like in Chaco Bottom in Richmond.
Oh, really? Oh, is that where they have the big flood wall?
Yes, but the problem is because it's the bottom, you've got your storm water openings on the street, and technically they're at or below the river's level. So they create, think of like a suction, like, taking gasoline out of a car's tank.
Oh, siphoning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
So it just doesn't drain as well as the it should. And consequently, yeah, the streets, if you get a heavy rain in Richmond, Chaco Bottom will flood.
All right.
What little I know about Waynesboro flooding is that the train trestle downstream kind of acts to back up water into the city. And so that's the one remaining problem. The bridges took care of the effect that they were having, the redo of the bridges, and the dam certainly will change the flood behavior. The other thing that I know historically, and I haven't seen it myself, but you could talk to just about anybody in town in Waynesboro who's seen a flood. The corner there at Arch Avenue in Maine, which is downhill from us significantly, there's a manhole there that will back up and the water will come flowing out of the manhole during a flood. So, and that was traditionally a raceway for a mill. So that's one of the reasons why it's kind of low in elevation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's about what we have for the evening. On Monday, the idea is that they're going to take into account, we've got notes from this evening, as well as the other Zoom call from Tuesday, I think it was, yesterday. So we'll provide that input and so forth. And again, these are things that will inform the next generation of drawings for sure. But the big thing right now is we want to get a hard cost estimate at this point. And Tom and Ann, we have right now scheduled generally with the design team. I was trying to bring it up on my my email here.
Yeah, the November 7th.
November 7th. Thank you.
Yeah, DEB, Department of Engineering and Building. Jacqueline's working on setting that up for us.
Yeah, so this will be sort of a preliminary conversation. Both of you or anyone are welcome to attend. Glave Holmes will be kind of doing the majority of the talking. I'd like to be there at least in person or in Zoom, just to kind of understand better what's going on. But yeah, once they firm that up, we'll make sure the proper people are alerted to that.
Right now, we're trying to determine whether it's in person or via Zoom, via Department of Engineering and Buildings, however they feel it should be handled.
That's a Monday, huh? So I'll have some classes, but I might be able to participate if it were remote.
Well, we could probably do a hybrid.
Oh.
You know, we'll just have to find out. Jacqueline from Glave Holmes, she was unsure if DEB was fully back in person. I'd be surprised if they weren't, to be blunt, but yeah, we'll find out.
Two questions. I'm sorry, Ann. Two questions. One is, who's doing the lead? Who's the lead on the flood plain study? Is that Timmons or?
Yes.
And then how much are we over on square footage at this point with our design? Because I know that there were some comments about we still need to cut back on square footage.
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, I honestly offhand.
Less than 10%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll say, you know, we haven't truly set that in concrete yet. So it's all still, it's just conceptual still. So hopefully we can get that down to within that 5% number where we need to be.
Now, one thing we've learned all along too is that, you know, things do change, concepts change, desires change. If we see a desire to increase the appropriate, not the appropriate, but the approved square footage, we can look into avenues for that. I mean, again, that's the nice thing about having Glave Holmes on contract, because they've been through a lot of this, and JMU, of course, as our construction manager, have been through this, so we can find out the avenue if we need to stay at a, you know, a couple thousand square feet or something. So just want to make sure people are thinking about that. Otherwise, that's what we have. And we're moving, and I thank you for taking the time to join us this evening.
Well, I appreciate it. And as I said, love the exterior concept.
It should
And
be
I
really
think-
cool.
Yeah, I think it will too. And again, I didn't think about it at the time, but I love the nod to, the surrounding Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a big sell point, if there's any public discussion of this project.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I especially think if we dedicate some areas and even show some mock-ups, like even of our, we've hung banners up on the side of this building here, and it really looks good. It just looks dynamic and inviting and so forth. So if we do a rendering and show how these spaces can be used, I think it'll be very attractive.
I think it'll, hopefully the citizens of Waynesboro will view it as, an economic development opportunity for the city.
Agreed.
A positive.
Agreed. All right. Very good.
All right, guys, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you,
All right.
Ann.
Bye, all.
Good to
Thanks
see
again.
you all.
If I don't talk
Yep.
to you, see you Friday noon.
Yeah, I'll try to